I'm Yulia, and this is Burning Questions. And the topic that has set the internet on fire this week is still what's going on with the peace talks in Ukraine. And we have Professor Gerdes here to help us answer this question.
I'm Darin Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to provide context in the war in Ukraine. I've been doing this since summer of 2022. I had initially just was shocked like everybody else when the war broke, and then I heard Zelensky's line of "I need ammunition, not a ride," and was like, "Whoa, like who's that?" Oh yeah, that's right. I remember Zelensky. And then I started bearing down into it, and it was like, wow, this is something like this. This is like the big story in the world. Let me make sure I'm following and understanding what's going on. And over time, I just started to realize that Zelensky was actually representative of Ukrainians and not just something special. But like I came to really grow to admire the Ukrainian people and their ability to rebound and stand up under this onslaught. And here we are, almost 1,300 days later now in the 3-day war. So that's how I got here.
Yeah, well, you do have a really great channel and you do explain quite a lot. So for that, we are, speaking on behalf of the whole nation, because obviously I have the right to, we are very grateful. But today, I think that a big topic of discussion is sort of like the entire circus that has been going on around the peace talks and the handling of the peace talks by the White House, and sort of like how the media narrative, at least from what we're seeing here in Ukraine, has changed from, wow, this is basically the same thing as we've seen for the past 2-3 years, to like, it's now in Zelensky's hands, or like Ukraine is going to decide its fate tomorrow. Meanwhile, nothing changed in the past literally 3 years, and Putin's demands are still the exact same after the Alaska fiasco. And then of course the airstrikes on Kyiv and sort of what's been going on with that. So what do you see? Like, what is your view of the whole picture here?
The most informative article or post or whatever, as I'm going through this, that I saw in the last month was one that said that Trump really just wants this to end and doesn't care how it ends.
Yeah.
Now that was commentary. It wasn't, some like clever, like really deep, informative, investigative. But I think there's something to that. I think he just wants it to be over so that he can go on and make sweet deals with Putin about Arctic exploration or oil or whatever it is. He just wants to get to the other side of it, and that's really unfortunate. I was talking to, I don't remember who, somebody about a month ago, and I realized as we were talking, like, if you take the morality out of this, Trump makes a lot more sense. Like, so if you're trying to, if you just set aside any morality of the invader invading the invadee and how wrong that is, then if you just set that aside, then the way that Trump's negotiating actually does make a lot more sense. But if the morality's in the picture, it's maddening. And like, you just can't process that same way. I'm afraid that is actually the way that things are working, and it's pretty terrible. Before Witkoff went to visit Moscow about 3 weeks ago. Before that happened, we are like on that 10 days down to sanctions, and it was starting to look like, hey, something might actually happen here. And then it all just blew up. And when we went to see the Alaska summit, we see Trump meeting with Putin, and Trump's happy as a lark to meet Putin. Why would you be that happy to see Putin? And do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's really weird.
Well, in my personal, very humble opinion, I think that Putin is kind of Trump's role model in a sense. Like, Trump likes that he is this like respected person in his country that no one can say anything to or no one can like go against. And I think he sort of has this like innate level of respect to him for him in a sense. And I also, he's kind of like,
how does that make sense? No, I mean, seriously, like, so I was talking to a history professor at school. We were just waiting for something to start, and we were just talking about like world politics kind of stuff, as I'm prone to do. And we were talking about this, and I said, like, this, John, this doesn't even make sense, right? It's like you're a PhD, the chair of your department, you're a tenured history professor. How Like it would be like you wanting to be a middle school social studies teacher, right? Like that. If Trump's admiring Putin, what would you, the 12th economy in the world? Like it's you're a fraction of the size. You're the 12th economy. You've got corruption. Like what are you 150 something out of 180 countries in corruption? Like I mean, like you're bad. It's all bad, 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 bad. Why would you want to be that? Why would you aspire toward that? That's what I don't understand.
Because his personal wealth and his personal status before 2022 was different. Putin himself is one of the richest people on the planet.
Well, I mean,
And
from stealing it from the entire country, sure,
yeah, but
but
like
that's hardly something to emulate.
But whereas does Trump have morale here? Because we're seeing how he talks and we're seeing what he says. And the other day he was like, America would benefit from a dictator, right?
Yeah,
So it's
and,
kind of like,
he did say, "I'm just joking." After that, because he's a showman who, and
yeah,
I know people are going to say, "Oh, Gerdes, he's sticking up for him." No, I'm trying to be fair. We just talked about this just before we got on, right?
yeah,
Trump's strength as in business is just as a showman, like a PT Barnum, right? It's not financial, that's for sure. It's as a showman, and whatever gets ratings, and he knows that kind of thing. And so
yeah,
he wants to be the subject and the talk about and whatever. And you're talking about him. You're giving
yeah.
him what he wants is to be talked about more.
But what I'm trying to say here is that, like, outside of being a showman and wanting attention and stuff, he also wants money and he wants power, right?
He
Like,
does.
because you can see that very, very much through like all of the super tacky, like gold covered pieces of the White House, and it now looks like a Russian Orthodox church. Honestly, it looks like the blueprints for the design of the White House were taken from a Russian Orthodox church. It's just like all of these like very tacky, very over the top gold details. And when people ask him about them, because they're clearly like decals from Home Depot that were painted gold, he says like, all this gold here, I don't know how much it costs, lots of money, right? So he kind of like wants to project this image of this like wealth and power and stuff. He's very egomaniacal, obviously. So I think that what gives him sort of like this admiration for Putin, because Putin actually does have a home encrusted in gold,
Well,
right?
so did Trump. Like so I've seen images of his Trump Tower home, and it's like it's gaudy how much gold layered stuff is. It's just, and I remember reading back in 2016, like him commenting like the White House, this is a dump. Like that was like his perspective of that after like living in gold encrusted kind of something, which I found tacky, but okay, that's just me. I mean, it's not my cup of tea. I think Trump is more interested in his legacy though than anything else. He wants a Nobel so bad he can taste it. He wants to go down in history as something really significant. So emulating Putin doesn't seem to be the path to get there. I mean, maybe he thinks it does, but that doesn't seem like a particularly good or useful path if you want to be remembered fondly.
But if you look at sort of like Trump's approach to business and Trump's approach to everything, it's very much like it's very outdated, right? Which is why he also keeps bankrupting his businesses, because, well, there is a lot of layers to why he keeps doing that, right? But as in like his approach is kind of like mobstery, right? And his like ideals and understanding of how to get rich and how to come to power are from like a point in history where there weren't that many laws protecting consumers or people weren't speaking out about it on the internet and stuff. And at that time, Putin was like the biggest thing. Like if we think about before 2022 or even before 2014, everyone was scared of Putin. Like everyone was scared of doing anything to Russia, because Russia is this like crazy powerhouse that's going to just like, unleash nuclear weapons onto you. And I think that his idea of Putin is not the post 2022 Putin that everyone sees as a paper tiger, that everyone sees as this like crazy person who lies all the time. His idea of Putin is that. But also, if you look at sort of like the model of how Trump talks to Americans versus the model of how Putin talks to Russians, like sure, Trump takes more press conference questions, and Putin only takes scripted ones, right? And Trump only takes the ones that he likes. But like he constantly lies, he constantly makes these things up that contradict each other, that make no sense. That's the same approach as Russia does in a sense, right? So his like sort of model of how to be not accountable for his actions is very similar to what Putin does. And that's how he like holds this grandeur and this power in Russia. And I think that's what Trump wants to emulate,
Okay,
not the economy.
I can see what you're saying there. I think Trump, if Trump is taking Putin as a role model, it's doing him far more of a disservice than a service. And you can see that in, excuse me, Trump 2.0. His administration is far worse, far weaker than Trump 1.0. When Trump came into office in 2016, he came in saying he wanted to have the best and brightest type of whoever. Like, I'll give you the example of General Mattis as the Secretary of Defense. Mad Dog Mattis, 4-star retired Marine general that they had to get an act of Congress to approve because he hadn't been out of service long enough. And now we have Hegseth. Very different, because we value loyalty over competence.
Yeah, well, because these are his yes men. And like all of the people that are in his administration and posts at which they're at, they're incompetent. Which brings me Witkoff, right? Like Witkoff is a real estate mogul who has never done diplomacy or politics in his life and can't do it to save his life, because he's just like a fish in like, I don't know, a fish in soup. Like, this is not an environment in which fish can survive and like swim for long enough. Like, I'm sure they can try. But Witkoff went to Russia with this like starry-eyed gaze of like, I am going to like talk to this dictator and we're gonna like get to a deal, right? And he's done that so many times, and so many times he fell flat on his face, that this time he misheard something, because he's decided to trust Russia. And instead of having a White House note taker who speaks both languages, English and Russian, he decided to take a Russian state translator, and he ran back to the MAGAs saying like, we have a major progress in this deal. Like, Putin is willing to relinquish territory for territory. I mean, still, can't can't call it a territorial swap, because this is Ukrainian territory for Ukrainian territory. But like, okay, sure. But he thought that like Putin is willing to exchange Kherson and Zaporizhia for like Donetsk and Luhansk. Meanwhile, what they were pondering or like pontificating from like far distance is that maybe they'll give up like the 3 villages that Russia holds in Sumy and 3 villages they hold in Kharkiv for like the entirety, 30% of Donbass that they don't hold.
Yeah. So there's Wickoff's wrong on so many levels. One, he broke White House protocol by not having at least a stenographer with him. I mean, not having anyone with him, just talking directly to Putin without any U.S. Archival anything, translator or stenographer. So that was wrong. And then, like, he's the wrong guy for the job. The Russians don't want Keith Kellogg, which is precisely who they should have to deal with if you really want to put pressure on. This charm offensive is exactly backwards. And the charm offensive is the opposite of what you see Trump talking about in his Art of the Deal. Like, if you ever read Art of the Deal, which isn't a great book, but if you ever read it, like, I'm going to, tell him I'm going to get so much and then I'll reduce it back and I'll, be happy with how much of a premium I got compared to what it was. Okay. But he's not even doing that. Like, so Witkoff is precisely the wrong guy with the wrong message being sent for the wrong reasons. And this whole campaign is not working. I don't know why Witkoff's there other than loyalty to Trump, which is the same kind of thing that we were just talking about, right? I mean, they're buddies. He trusts him. Trust between Trump and Witkoff is there, but competence is not. And there's got to be somebody more competent somewhere in the State Department. I just can't imagine that there's not. But yeah, it's just bad. And coming back, talking about we have a deal and mismanaging what you heard in the deal, where somehow they were going to get back Luhansk they were going to get back Zaporizhia and Kherson as a trade for Donetsk and Luhansk, and that wasn't even it. That wasn't so. But the upside of that is that Putin showed us that he's really still all in, and he's really hasn't changed at all, and there's been no motion there, and so it's now very clear.
But even sort of like the stupid deal that they thought they had, right? Like, Ukrainian constitution, clearly, like, they keep saying it's like in the hands of Zelensky, right? Like, no, it's in the hands of Ukrainian people, and it's in the hands of like the constitution. Ukrainian constitution clearly states that you cannot swap and exchange and relinquish Ukrainian territories on a whim. First of all, if there was even a question of that, it would have to be an all Ukrainian referendum. But with all Ukrainian referendum, that means that Donetsk and Luhansk would have to participate in it. But the people of Donetsk and Luhansk, who should have participated in it in 2014, right, along with the rest of Ukraine, don't live there anymore. And it's now like planted Russians. Mariupol is full of like Chechens and Yakuts and Buryats and like people from very, very far away in Russia that are quite literally repopulating
Yeah.
Mariupol to make it look Russian.
And that's the old
So,
Soviet playbook. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, of course. And that's one of those things where like and it couldn't happen under martial law. And again, like Russia has created all of the circumstance for this referendum to be impossible because again, they took the native population and put it in like camps somewhere in Russia. They like stole children and indoctrinated them.
So,
They're
so like that should be the headline here before we
yeah.
do anything else. And like I said earlier, like if you took morality out, this all makes sense. Put morality back in. Let's talk about getting your children back before we do anything else. Let's arm you to the teeth until and let them blow the crap out of your whatever until such time as those children return. This should be like thing number one on the agenda, and we're missing it because we're looking ahead to the future deals that we might be making as opposed to what really matters right now. I'll tell you what, I mean, you ask any parent, if your child was missing in your own city, you'd be pulling your hair out. Imagine if they were exported to another country where you couldn't possibly get to them. I mean, just so yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of stories just like that, right? And there's stories of like grandmothers and grandfathers and parents finding their children on Russian propaganda TV,
Wow.
and then like, and then engaging in this like months long battle of like bringing these kids back. Like there was a grandma that traveled from, I think they were from Mariupol, and she traveled to like some Russian region, like far in Russia, to go and recover her grandchild because they like wouldn't, like they wouldn't give him back to her. And she's like, but he has family. Like this is not even an orphan. Like I am
Right.
his family. Like you've separated me from him. There were parents that did the same. Then there were kids from orphanages who like escaped Russia and stuff because like they have this like site now which is like Tinder for adopting Ukrainian children.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like it looks like an auction lot. It's like we have this child age 14, like mental health, this, right? Like here are his bad behaviors, here are his good behaviors, this is what
Yeah.
they know to do, this is what they don't know to do. It's like worse than descriptions of dogs in shelters. And
But
this is
have Russians ever thought of Ukrainians as equal or I mean, so this is part of the problem, right? I mean, the way that Russians perceive, and again, this is a generalization, right? But the way that Russians writ large perceive Ukrainians writ large are less than even the outer lands or borderlands or little Russians or that sort of
yeah.
thing. And correct me if I'm wrong here. My understanding is that Russians see Ukrainians as Russians who have been contaminated with some nationalistic virus of this idea that they are Ukrainian and different than Russians, and so they either need to be converted or exterminated.
Yes, that's pretty much how they see us.
So wouldn't it stand to reason that they would, given that they would do what they're doing with this Tinder-like site about adopting these I mean, like it makes sense. I'm not saying that it's good. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it should be at all.
No,
But
yeah.
doesn't,
It
given
just
their
makes
worldview,
yeah.
doesn't it make sense from their perspective that
Yeah.
they would act in that stupid way?
Yeah, exactly. It makes like complete sense what they're doing. It makes complete sense why their approach is sort of like to like I don't know, to show these Ukrainian children as lots that you need to like take into your home, treat poorly, and just like re-educate, right?
Right. And I'm not saying that that's in a good way. I'm saying it in the
Yeah,
same way that doesn't
yeah,
it make
yeah.
sense that that 6 million Jews were exterminated given the Nazis' view of at the time, or that the rape of Nanking happened given the way that the Japanese, their military, their Bushido culture, and the way that they were seeing themselves as masters in their region. So that leads us to that the best thing for both Russia and the world is that Russia loses and has to really do a lot of soul searching and reforming in their cultural and probably government as well, and how things function. Otherwise, we just have this in perpetuity. It doesn't go away. They never had to face up to it after the end of the fall of the Soviet Union. They just kind of carried on.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like the world, because Russia shaped so much of how the world views Russia, because they've invested so much money into Russian propaganda in both culture and and by culture, I mean like theater, books, movies. Like you don't even see it, right? But like one of the big discussions in Ukraine recently has been about how still today Netflix pushes like pro-Russian narratives out of nowhere. There will be like a show that is completely not connected to Russia whatsoever. I'll give you an example of The Crown, you know, like the show about British monarchy, right? About
Yeah.
Queen Elizabeth and her father and stuff. At some point during the and it's like done in seasons, and seasons that are done as decades, sort of. So
Sure.
there is like the Princess Diana decade, right? Like when she meets Charles and when they're like whatever, and then the next decade. So in the decade where they're like marriage is decomposing and he's going to see her somewhere in her like home where she now lives, right? He's driving in a car and it's like 1991. Okay. I know it's 1991 because on the radio they say Ukraine turned its back on Soviet Union and exited, and like it's basically this like whole, it's like 30 seconds and they're talking about how Ukraine turned its back on Soviet Union, right? And exited and like basically flipped off this Gorbachev and decided to like go on its own, right?
Well, so
And
did
I'm
Lithuania, Latvia,
yeah,
Estonia,
yeah,
Poland.
exactly. But I'm also sure that like the news coverage said it exactly like that in that era. Like I'm sure it's an actual excerpt of news coverage, but why? Because the show was not at all talking about Ukraine or Russia or the Soviet Union. Like it was not mentioned anywhere in any of the episodes, even with like the Crown dealing with it. There was not a plot line about the fall of the Soviet Union. It was 30-second excerpt when Charles is driving in his car to see Diana.
Mhm.
That's it, right? Because that's subliminal messaging, because you're watching the show and it's a super popular show. And the thing that you remember, because it's so out of the blue, right? It's something that just like, why is it even there? And it's like a quiet scene, nothing's happening before or after. It's just a car drive, and all you hear is Ukraine turned its back on Soviet Union.
So, setting aside the subliminal messaging from the Netflix show, I think far more powerful is all the messaging that comes from social media. And just like I said earlier, Trump is good at marketing. The he looks like an amateur compared to the Russians when they're doing their propaganda, because they're masterful at spending time and resources efficiently targeting the minds of decision makers in the West. And
Well,
go ahead.
didn't it just came out that top right wing influencers that are basically not like paid by Trump, but that work with with the GOP? Didn't they? Didn't it just come out that they were paid to spew Russian talking points?
Well, and so I mean, you've seen a number of those kind of connections over time. I don't know. Maybe I'm not see. I haven't seen that yet, but like that has happened multiple times where you're like, there's way too many connections here, but there are. I mean, even things like if you want to get into the policy world, like the Heritage Foundation used to be the flagship organization for the. I mean, I've been to heritage events, and it used to
Yeah,
be like the flagship conservative like bastion of intellectual. It's not that
yeah,
anymore. It's changed, and
yeah,
yeah, I know. I'm really shocked at how quickly it was changed as well. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, like you might have not seen it, but yeah, it just came out recently. There was like an investigation done where like a right wing influencers, so like Charlie Kirk, all of these people, right?
Uh-huh.
They were quite literally directed and paid. Well, they're directed to say a lot of stuff, but they were directed and paid to say Russian talking points
Wow. No,
by by the Republicans.
yeah, I haven't seen whatever the investigation is, and it just came out just in the last day or two or something. Or
Yeah, like very recently.
I haven't seen that. I've been trying to follow everything as much as possible, like the
It's second
crazy amount of
avalanche.
bombings in Kyiv, which was what was it, second highest last night, or
So
not last night, the night before.
I don't know.
It was at least in the top five for sure.
So I don't know.
629.
Yeah, I don't know if it was the second highest or something like that. It was definitely not the highest for the first time
The
ever.
highest was 700 something, and then the others were like somewhere between 6 and 650, and this
Yeah,
was 629.
yeah. So it's interesting because like normally every new bombing that they have done on Kyiv particularly has been like higher and higher and higher. This one wasn't, but this one was different because first of all they launched ballistic missiles from Bryansk. Bryansk is 300 kilometers, not 700 or 800 kilometers away from Ukraine like it usually is.
Hmm.
Bryansk is much closer, like it's way closer.
Sure.
um, so one of the things that happened is that Kyiv had 2 minutes to react to the ballistic missiles, the first two, when
Oh
usually
wow.
Kyiv has 8 to 9 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a huge
Yeah,
change.
that is big. That yeah. And
Most of
they have terrible the Ukrainians have a very difficult time shooting down ballistic missiles because ballistic missiles are a real different. I mean, they're the
yeah,
up and down thing rather than the cruise missiles that
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And so another thing with that is that like most of the OSINT channels, like we have OSINT channels that we all follow on Telegram that'll be like,
Yeah.
there are 40 drones in the air right now. Here are their locations, or here is like the route that they seem to be taking, right? So about 2:30 a.m. It said all clear, mostly all clear for Kyiv. Like, don't leave shelters yet. But well, I mean, most people don't go to shelters for shaheeds. But it's like all clear, don't leave shelters yet, but there are not necessarily any drones in Kyiv's airspace. They're all heading towards like other cities like Vinnytsia and Khmelnytsky and like everything else, right?
Mhm.
And so everyone took that as like, okay, well, it's going to be all clear soon, we should go to bed. So we all went to bed at about like 2:50, and then we all woke up at about 3:10 or 3:15 from like, and I mean it was an excruciating noise. So all of the OSINT channels didn't see the missiles, or like the air defense didn't see the missiles enter the airspace because it was hard to catch, because again the window of opportunity was so much smaller than it
Right.
usually is.
Right.
And so these missiles weren't intercepted because no one, like, genuinely no one saw them. No one saw them coming. And I think that's the one that hit the British Council building,
Yeah.
because the British Council is 3 kilometers away from me. And for me, like, the blast wave from that was so strong that like my doors opened in my apartment
Uh-huh.
from my
Wow.
bedroom, yeah, from my bedroom to like my living room. And like my windows shook. One of my windows was like, European windows, they kind of lean out to open, not like American
Yeah.
windows, like pull them up. So it was opened like that, it shut itself, and then
Huh.
like shut itself close. Yeah. And it was like very, very loud, and my dogs like got up immediately. Like normally, like I have two French bulldogs and they're very lazy, so I have to like collect them around the apartment and run to the shelter. And
Mhm.
they were like, it was like the first time where I was just like, let's go, and they like followed me because it was terrifying. Like they were
Yeah.
terrified. And we went into the bomb shelter, heard explosions in the background, and then the entire time that we were sitting there until 6:30 in the morning, it was just like boom, boom, and it like you could feel the impact of ballistics because the entire underground garage was shaking. You
Wow.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is I'm sorry that you have to live through that. I mean that's a poor way of saying that. I'm sorry that you have to endure that. The the headline here though is like the British council building is hit, and they're, I'm sure, going to lodge strong protests, but nothing more will come of it. And because nothing more comes of it, it keeps coming. You get what you tolerate, right? If
Yeah.
as long as you keep allowing that to happen, it keeps happening. So at a certain point, like you just gotta do the thing that they don't want to do, which is to have to commit more resources, more something, say, sorry, you've crossed this line, and now, like, this whole war has been a game of don't cross this line, don't cross this line, don't cross this line, but lines keep getting crossed, and yeah. Anyway, you see Putin not being, or saying, don't cross this line, and then we crossed all the lines and nothing happened. She
Yeah.
works the other way as well, and we're just not
Yeah.
doing anything.
I mean, it's also kind of, it's very crazy to witness, especially when you're sitting in a bomb shelter, right? And then Russian foreign minister comes out and says, "We're still willing to negotiate with Ukraine for peace." And it's like, what peace? You're barraging me with missiles right now.
Okay, the actual quote, I just happen to have it on a different screen here, is Peskov saying at the time, "The strikes are successful, targets are being destroyed, and the special military operation continues. At the same time, Russia maintains its interest in continuing the negotiation process with the aim of achieving the objectives before us through political and diplomatic means." He's not at all interested in actually doing anything, but he's willing to say the diplomatic speak in order to sound like they're moving that direction, and we're just buying it.
Yeah, and
So
they also said that it's Ukraine that strikes civilians and it's Russia that strikes military targets, which is funny because there has not been a single death of a Russian civilian from Ukrainian airstrikes anywhere in Russia.
So,
Uh,
and Lavrov was just talking about this the other day on the Sunday News Morning Show. Good on the journalist who held his feet to the fire, NBC journalist, and saying, "Well, which is it? Are you intentionally doing this, or is it an accident? And your weapons aren't that good?" But he said, "No, we don't. We never target civilians. We don't do that. I don't know where you're getting these reports. 50,000. Well, I don't know what you're reading. I have to see that." It struck me this morning because I saw a picture of some of those that were killed in Kyiv. It's up to 22 now, or 24, something like that,
mhm.
and they were all women and children. Well, no, there was one kid. I mean,
Yeah.
but he was like, probably not quite of military age, of the ones that I saw. So
Mhm.
it's worse than what it even sounds like when we say, well, they're striking civilians. No, they're striking disproportionately women and children, and maybe a senior citizen or an underage male. Like, that's the reality here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're actually like choosing specifically apartment buildings where there are more women and children, but it's
No, no,
just
no. I'm just saying the
yeah,
civilian population, because the
yeah,
male population is disproportionately at the
yeah,
front as well. It's disproportionately hitting women and children. Like,
yeah,
like as if it's not bad enough that they're just hitting civilians.
yeah. Exactly. And it's like, when they say that they strike military targets and then their propagandists and their trolls that have been so rampant, they come out on Twitter and start saying that it's like, oh, if Ukraine didn't like have drone production facilities in the middle of the city, like we don't. There has not been a single drone production facility ruined by Russia in Ukraine since like the beginning of the full-scale invasion, I want to say. Because they don't target, like they actually exclusively don't target military infrastructure. None of our military infrastructure has ever been taken out.
Yeah, I'm not there, so I can't speak to that. That's not something that I'm aware
It's,
of, so I'll defer to you on that. But they
I
do
know
seem
of
to
like
want to target civilians as much as, if not more than,
it's
anything military.
only ever strikes on civilians. I know of like a strike in 2022 that took out a dorm for a college where soldiers,
Yep.
like a military
Yeah.
university. So that I remember.
There was that massing of troops at some point,
For a
that was,
funeral.
yeah, I don't even remember what the occasion was, but
Yeah.
at least you would say, okay, those are troops. That's a
Yeah, yeah.
military
So
kind of
that
purpose.
wasn't that was in 2024 or 2023, and then there was one recent one where it was the barracks, and I can't say where they were or what it was, but those are like okay, three examples.
Yeah, it's few and far between.
Examples. While I can list you so many examples of scorched cities, children who are now disabled and have and have lost their eyesight or their ability to walk, or their hearing, or they're, like they're a burn victim, or they have shrapnel wounds all over, or it's just, I can give you so many examples of those, right? I can give you examples of, there's a building 3 blocks away from me where like a drone debris fell on top of it, and like half of the building is destroyed, half of the top floors of the building. My friend was sleeping at night when his windows were blown out in his apartment, and magically he was unharmed because, like, glass shards and stuff. I Another friend of mine just went to he has him and his wife live in her apartment, and he has an apartment that they haven't renovated yet, that they wanted to rent out for extra income, basically. And they just went there. The like metal door is blown off its hinges. All of the windows in the apartment are missing, and like there was an I think a ballistic missile intercepted over the apartment complex, and so most of the apartments in that complex, and it's like a huge one. Think of like multiple buildings, right? It's one of the biggest ones in Kyiv. Most of the apartments in that building are ruined to some degree.
Yeah, sure.
Like the structurally the building is fine, but it's like windows are not there, doors are not there, like, all of the cabinets have fallen off and stuff like that. The only reason they're not experiencing it is because the apartment was like concrete, right? Like there was nothing in there. It's just windows and doors, and all of the windows and doors are blown off its hinges. So it's like, how is that,
Yeah. So, given what we just described of the way that Russia views you all in Ukraine, it doesn't surprise me that this is, and I think that this is going to be, it's the future is going to be more about the long range attacks than it is about the front lines. The front lines are important. I'm not minimizing that at all. They're incredibly important, but it's over time as the technology changes. Like your Shahed drone attacks have gotten worse over time. And when I say worse, I don't just mean numerically more. I mean, like the Shaheds are improved, and I don't mean improved like a good thing. I mean it like worse in their payloads, or greater payloads, more destruction, that sort of thing. I saw something about a jet Shahed drone, not just the props, but now, like, right. So as the tech improves, it's going to just ramp up, and it's both sides are doing this, where they're improving their tech, and the long range strikes over time are going to get more painful for Russia as well. While we're talking about these long range strikes, the amount of damage that Ukraine's been able to inflict on Russia over just this month, it's August. It's the end of August right now. Like it's from August 1st till now, 20+% or so of refining capacity been, like, at least 17% is offline. A little bit more than that, I think now. Last night there were a couple more strikes. Like like it's been pretty bad for Russia for what Ukraine has been doing to the refining. I'm stunned. I haven't seen this much progress from Ukraine in damaging Russia since mid 2024, when they were doing this for a little while, and then they slowed down because I think it was because of the election cycle in the U.S. And I'm not confident that that's true. That's the reason, but that's like my speculation. But this last month was really hard on Russia. I mean, this was probably the most punitive month on Russia economically that I've seen yet.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah. 100%.
So that's the big story here. I mean, I know we talked about all kinds of other things, politics with Trump and Witkoff being, I don't know why he's even there, or I mean, but and it's really tragic. My other observation, you're in Kyiv, right? Okay, so my other observation is that the proportion of strikes that Ukraine seems to be able to defend against, and it's hard to defend against drones, but you had 93% knockdown rate last night, but that's because it was disproportionately hitting Kyiv. You're in better shape, weirdly, in Kyiv than you are in. I don't know if you have a comparable term for podunk, You know, when I
Mhm.
say
Yeah,
podunk in the US, like some little town
yeah,
or little village or
yeah, yeah.
little city somewhere in some other city where there's just not the air defense in the
But
same
for
way.
instance, in Ukraine, it's different because little cities are not necessarily like hit because Putin has no interest in them, right? Unless
But
they're
when
in
they are hit,
yeah,
because they do periodically hit things, and I'm like, why did they hit that? Why? What's out there? And
nothing.
when they go after other places other than like a Kharkiv, a Kyiv,
Mhm.
Lviv, something, when they go after these other places, their percentage it goes way down to like 60-70% of what gets shot down. So it's just it's an odd thing. That's just my observation. Maybe I'm off.
No, no, you're not off. I mean, like, there are also cities that have, so we have a very limited amount of air defense batteries that are able to, for instance, like shoot down like hypersonic missiles or ballistic missiles, right?
Mhm.
And so we need to strategically think of where these batteries need to be put and
Sure.
like where they're needed, not like the most, but like where they're protecting the most like valuable infrastructure like stuff, right? And
Sure.
it has to be the capital where like all of the kind of decision making infrastructure is, and like military generals and like things like that. So Kyiv is much more protected. For instance, like Odessa, that gets hit all the time, doesn't have the luxury of that. Their
Mhm.
air defense is not working nearly as well. And then Kharkiv, it doesn't matter what air defense you put there, it's right on the border
Yeah,
with
I mean, it's that's a terrible place to have to defend,
yeah.
given how close it is, right?
Kharkiv at some point was the capital of Ukraine. And the reason why they changed it to Kyiv is specifically because it was so close to Russia and it'd be like nothing to invade.
Well, how long? That's really interesting. How long ago was that?
Kharkiv was actually, let me look it up because I'm always
I had
this.
never heard that before, but that's really interesting.
Yeah, Kharkiv the capital of Ukraine, and it was from 1919 to 1934,
Huh.
serving as the first capital of Soviet Ukraine.
Well, that was quite an a prescient observation, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Wow.
because like, well, what it was is like sort of for Soviet Union, it was a lot more convenient because Kharkiv was like right there, right? But for Ukrainians, it wasn't, because in 1919, like we didn't want to be a part of Soviet Union. We didn't join on our volition. We joined by force. We were invaded, right? Yeah, it was just a little too close for comfort to Russia.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. At any rate,
Mhm.
I kind of went back off into the
Mhm.
drones attacking the cities and that sort of thing, but the
Yeah.
oil refineries, that's the a big story that
Yeah.
like it's doing real damage. And if you look
Yeah.
inside what's going on in Russia and oil or gas running out in various places,
Yeah.
or just the financial hit to it or whatever, like that's significant. And it
There's
shouldn't be
totally.
overlooked. If you've done a month like that and you can do another month like this in September, man,
Mhm.
you're almost halfway to like they now they'll be able to backfill it eventually. So but in the meantime, it's going to create a significant dilemma. Um, the guy that hit the pipeline, the
Mhm.
a guy in Italy that apparently was responsible for taking out Nord Stream. Nord Stream would have provided 16 billion annually.
Yeah.
Now, so he might get 15 years. Like he should get a medal or something. I mean, like, I mean, for the amount of effect that he had for what he did. At the time, I didn't know who did it. I was like, man, does Ukraine have the capacity to do that? I don't. Is it a false flag? Is it? It's not the Americans. What's going on? Okay, so think about the 16 billion annually over the 3+ years of that
Yeah.
of what
That's a lot
they've
of money.
deprived. Yeah, right. So now, and this Russian, now Putin just nationalized a Finnish company and like essentially stole back 30
Yeah.
billion euro or something along, I mean, something crazy
Yeah.
worth
Yeah.
of something. So he'll just steal or take or do something, or an oligarch will fall out of a window and you'll have, so he'll keep replenishing somehow. But it's in the meantime, it's going to create a real problem when he does what he
Of
did
course.
or what the Ukrainians did with hitting the oil refineries. I think we might even get to a point where and I I'm not trying to be prophetic here or whatever. I'm
Mhm.
just speculating. And we might even get to a point where the shadow fleet is
Yeah.
importing rather than exporting
Yeah.
refined product. Wouldn't that be weird?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a speculation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like that's the thing. I don't think like people are talking enough about how much damage, like viable damage, Ukraine has actually done to Russia in the past like couple of months, even this summer. It was like we took out 20% of their of their gas infrastructure, of
Mhm.
their what they sell in gas, and that's fantastic. And like we are actually economically destroying them, and that's we're like to a point where they have to like think of creative ways to continue being able to sponsor this war. And the news doesn't talk about any of it. The news talks about one village that Russia was able to occupy in the
So,
past God knows how long.
and so that's another thing. That's, I mean, I said the front lines aren't not important. They are important. I get that, but the front lines have
Mhm.
not been the headline. And um, remember how there was supposed to be this devastating summer offensive coming forward? Ukraine's
Mhm.
just been amazing in blunting that.
Mhm.
Rolled back Sumy. I mean, remember Istanbul?
Yeah.
Istanbul. They were having these threats. Oh, you're not going to make a deal? Okay. Well, we'll take Sumy and Kharkiv too.
Yeah.
It didn't
Yeah.
work out so well.
Yeah.
So that big summer offensive just didn't seem to materialize. Now, I think it didn't materialize because and I could be wrong. Again, this is my speculation, but because of drones. I don't think either side can really push forward in the way that we've thought traditionally about pushing forward because
Yeah.
drones are a minefield in the sky.
Yeah.
So you just can't do what you could have done when the invasion first started.
Yeah.
And so that's blunted a lot of what Putin thought he was able to do moving forward. And somebody somewhere is still telling Putin they can take stuff. So he seems to be convinced that he's going to take some great ground, but I just don't see it. I don't think that's I don't think it's realistic.
Yeah. I don't think it is. I think well, Kharkiv would be like a suicide mission, to be honest. A lot of these things that he threatens with are not viable or feasible, and Ukrainians know that. That's why we're not scared. It's the Western world that kind of takes his threats.
And that's what I mean. This propaganda machine is awesome in the worst way possible. Like it
Yeah,
is powerful.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It very much is, for sure. Um, well, I guess it's the point where we can conclude sort of everything that we've talked about. And I will say this: I think that everything that Putin says is designed to delay. It's a
Yeah.
tactic of delaying, and it's a tactic of prolonging. And it's funny when people say that Ukraine wants to prolong the war. We don't. We actually would be very happy to push Russia out of our territory, and it's very feasible to do. Russia wants to prolong because Russia knows that they can't win on the battlefield. And Russia doesn't want peace, obviously doesn't, because when you're sitting at a bomb shelter at 5 in the morning in the center of Kyiv, like I live probably what would be like, if you think of districts, it's like I'm in District 2, just touching District 1, right?
Mhm.
So like of the very center, and I'm like a little bit off center. And I was sitting in my bomb shelter, and it felt like these bombs were going off like right outside, right? Like as in like on my street. The car alarms were ringing, everything. It was chaos. And one of the things that they're trying to do is they know that they can defeat the Ukrainian population because Ukrainians don't want them there. So their goal is to destabilize us and drive us crazy. And I mean that. And it's like,
Mhm.
when you sit in the bomb shelter at like 5:30 in the morning, and some people have like air mattresses there. I've seen people who like got, like those beds for kids where
Mhm.
like it's smaller than your actual twin bed, but you can like
Yeah, a
it
little cot
folds.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it like folds out or something, right? So they've put those next to their cars and their parking spots, right? So they can come in and sleep there. I've literally been looking to rent a parking spot in my garage so I can put a full-size bed in there and just sleep there when like on nights like this, right? Because like my back is giving out, and it's like I was sitting in my car because my car is parked there, and I have these like little mats, foldable mats, and there were people on there that had nowhere to sit, so obviously I wasn't going to like shoo them away just so I can like sleep laying down. So I went to sit in my car, and it's like 5:30, and I'm sitting there and my eyes are closing, right? But I also can't fall asleep sitting no matter what I do. Like even on the planes, I sleep like this, and there is like just no opportunity for me to do that. I also have two dogs in the back of my Mini Cooper. It's a tiny car. So I am like suffering, right? Because I'm folded in half. I'm sitting there. I can barely keep my eyes open. I can't go upstairs because there are drones and missiles hitting nearby. And that's the effect of terror that they want. They want the Ukrainian people to give up.
Mhm.
That's what they want.
Yeah, I think so. And if there's a headline to this video, it's the amazing resilience of the Ukrainian people. Just think about everything that we've talked about this whole time.
Mhm.
The Ukrainians are just incredibly resilient and able to withstand so much and just keep coming back and pushing the Russians back every
Yeah.
time the Russians keep pushing. Like that's the big story. The headline is
Yeah.
Ukrainians are resilient. If I just gave you
Yeah.
the title, you're welcome.
Thank you. I don't know
but
what the
but that's
title
but that's
is
really
gonna
everything that
be.
we talked about.
Yeah, it is
So
very much so.
anyway, that's probably a good note to end it on
Yeah.
too.
Well, thank you for that.
Hey,
It's a great
thanks for
one.
having me. It's a great conversation.
Thank you. And a very poetic ending, right? Well, I hope this conversation was as interesting and productive to you as it was to me, because, well, these always are. And if you enjoyed it, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, turn on all of your notifications, give this video a like, send it to a friend. And of course, if you have something to say, don't hesitate to do so in the comments down below, and I'll make sure to read it. Till next time.